In the last video, we established this truth, that judgment is coming after death for all humanity. And at this future judgment, some people will be rewarded with eternal life and others will be sentenced to eternal punishment. This is a big problem, and ultimately for us, it's an insurmountable problem. So again, as we mentioned in the last video, the next appropriate question is, what do you have to do to be judged by God as righteous and not evil? It helps us to understand what does it mean to be righteous. A righteous person is someone who has not broken God's laws, someone who hasn't broken His commandments. So therefore, if you are righteous and you haven't broken God's commandments, then you will be declared innocent at God's court of law. Is that you? Are you innocent when it comes to the laws of God? Have you never broken one of His commandments? Will you be declared not guilty before God when He judges you? You might not be sure whether or not you will be judged innocent or guilty, but we can find out. God has spelled out His commandments to humanity. We find them in the Bible, and a common litmus test to determine whether or not you're innocent before God is the 10 Commandments. Let's walk through those commandments briefly. There are 10 of them again. Number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. Number 2, you shall not make for yourself an idol. Number 3, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. Number 5, honor your father and your mother. 6, you shall not murder. 7, you shall not commit adultery. 8, you shall not steal. 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. That means you don't lie. And number 10 is you shall not covet. You shall not want selfishly for yourself what somebody else has. So, how did you do whenever you stack up your life to those 10 simple commandments? If you're being honest with yourself, then you've broken God's laws. We all have. We've all dishonored our parents at one time or another. All of us have lied. Probably all of us has stolen something, even if it was something really small. We've all placed other things ahead of God. That's what it means to have an idol before God. We've all valued things more than we've valued our own Creator. But even more than that, concerning the heart, and Jesus points to the heart in the New Testament whenever He talks about the law. Concerning the heart, we're all as guilty as murderers, and we're all as guilty as adulterers. Jesus, again, the one who was sent from God, the one who also is God, He taught that these offenses happen in the heart, even if we don't commit them in the flesh. This is what He says in Matthew chapter 5. He says, I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. He also says that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court, the heavenly court. So if you've lusted after someone in your heart, you are guilty as someone who has committed adultery. If you've had unrighteous anger and hatred towards somebody else, then you are just as guilty as a murderer. The sins come out from the heart. That's where they begin. So again, if you're being honest with yourself, you're not going to find righteousness or innocence whenever you look at yourself in the mirror. You're going to find wickedness. You're going to find guilt. It's not just you, though. The Bible states very plainly that all of us are guilty before God. Romans 3:10, there is none righteous, not even one. Not a single human being has attained righteous status before God. Ephesians 2, beginning in verse 1, says, you were dead in your trespasses and sins. You formerly walked in them according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, that's the enemy of God, of the spirit that is now working in the sons of disobedience. We all too, the text says, we formerly lived in the lusts of our flesh, indulging the desires of our flesh and our minds. We were by nature children of wrath. Anybody who says, whenever they consider themselves as a human being, I'm pretty good, I'm good, they don't understand the biblical definition of what it means to be good or righteous before God, we are not as good as we think we are. Titus 3 says, "We also once were foolish, disobedient, deceived, enslaved, spending our life in malice and envy, hateful and hating one another." So again, as people, we are not as good as we think we are. In fact, we are far worse. And remember this, God is a just judge. He's a good judge. He will not let the guilty ones go unpunished. Put yourself in the position of someone who's been offended. If someone has committed a crime against you, let's say they stole your information through identity theft and they took all of the money in your bank account, you would be very upset if a judge looked at that lawbreaker and let him or her go free without any restitution to you. That would be a bad judge. That's the definition of a bad judge. A good judge is one who upholds the law and serves justice, which includes giving the appropriate punishment to those who break the law. God is the same way. God is a good judge. He's a perfect judge, and His character will not allow justice to be perverted by those who break His law. The guilty cannot go unpunished, which means we all deserve punishment from God, and He is actually right in giving us the punishment that we deserve. Again, this is horrible news, an insurmountable problem for us, but there is hope.